All right, guys, today we're going to do just some regular Punnett Square stuff. And if you watched the video yesterday, this is very similar to it, except you're going to be doing this more on your own. This is set up in your files as a Google document. So you'll kind of be able to write on it. You won't be able to do the Punnett Squares like I am up here. You will need to be able to do Punnett Squares though, so I suggest having a piece of paper next to you so that you can actually start working them out yourself. When it comes time for the test, you'll have to end up taking pictures of that stuff and sending it in to me. So it's good that you start learning how to do that stuff now in case you don't remember it from previous years. So we're going to use this SpongeBob worksheet to kind of go through everything. So scientists at Bikini Bottoms have been investigating the genetic makeup of the organisms in this community. Use the information provided and your knowledge of genetics to answer each question. We're starting off very simply, and we're just saying for each genotype below, indicate whether it is a heterozygous, you're going to label that HE, or homozygous, HO. Move it down a little bit. So if it's homozygous, that means that it is the same case. So they're either both uppercase or they're both lowercase. If it's heterozygous, that means that they're different. So that would be an uppercase letter and a lowercase letter. So 2 capital T's is going to be homozygous. Now, if we were doing this all the way out here, we would be saying it's homozygous dominant because they are both capital. Big D, little d, that's going to be heterozygous. And again, you don't have to say heterozygous, dominant, or recessive because heterozygous, we know, is one of each. And generally, it's going to go towards the dominant side of things until you get into incomplete dominance and codominance. So capital B, little b, that's also heterozygous because they are different. 2 lowercase f's is going to be homozygous, and it would be homozygous recessive because they're lowercase. 2 capital D's, that is going to be homozygous, and they're going to be dominant. Capital T, little t, that's going to be hetero because they are different. Capital F, lowercase f, that one is also hetero. 2 lowercase b's, that's going to be homozygous, and it would be recessive because they're lowercase. 2 lowercase t's, that would be homozygous, and it would be recessive because they are lowercase. 2 capital B's, that one is going to be homozygous, dominant because they are both capital. 2 lowercase d's, that one's going to be homozygous, it would be recessive. And 2 capital F's is going to be homozygous, dominant because they're both capital. Which of the genotypes in number 1 would be considered a purebred? And which would be considered hybrids? In order to be a purebred, that means that you have 2 of the same trait. So we're going to go with all the homozygous ones. They would be purebreds. Whenever they would go to reproduce, they would only be able to pass along their lineage, you could say. So they'd only be able to pass along one of their capital T's, or if it was this one, they'd only be able to pass along one of their lowercase f's. There's no 50-50 shot at anything with a purebred. They always pass on the same exact genes every time. If we're looking at hybrids, that's going to be your heterozygous ones. And that's because they have one of each. So a lot of times people like hybrid things. They may have better immune systems if you're talking about living organisms, or they might have an extra little trait in there, characteristic that you're not aware of, so it could be a bad thing, but hybrids most of the time are supposed to be healthier. It allows for more genetic variation within the group. Number 2, determine the phenotype for each genotype using the information provided about SpongeBob. So yellow body color is dominant to blue. So we're determining phenotype. Yellow is dominant, so if I have 2 capital Y's, that's going to be a yellow body. Phenotype is what they look like. Capital Y, lowercase y is still going to be yellow because yellow is dominant. And if I have 2 lowercase y's, that's where I'm going to get the blue phenotype. Square shape is dominant to round, so 2 capital S's would be square. capital S and a lowercase s would be square. And whenever you're doing your own Punnett squares, I highly suggest you stay away from the letter S, because unless you make it very apparent about which one's capital and which one's lowercase, it's really hard for someone who is grading those to differentiate between the two. You can do it when you're typing because I can tell if it's bigger or lower, but whenever you're handwriting stuff, it gets a little bit complicated. The two lowercase ones is going to be round. For each phenotype, get the possible genotypes for Patrick. So a tall head, capital T, is dominant to a short head. So if he was tall, that means he could have two capital T's. And he could also have just one capital T and one lowercase t. So he could be heterozygous. It's still going to go towards that dominant phenotype because it is a capital letter. For short, it would have to be two lowercase t's. Pink body color is dominant to yellow. So he could have two capital P's, or he could have a capital P and a lowercase p. For a yellow body color, that would be two lowercase p's. SpongeBob SquarePants recently met Sponge Susie Roundpants at a dance. SpongeBob is heterozygous for his square shape, but Susie is round. Create a Punnett square to show the possibilities that would result if the SpongeBob and Sponge Susie had children. Hint, read question number 2. So it tells you to go back to question 2 only because it talks about their shape. So we know that if she is round, she's going to be recessive. And that's the only reason it's telling us to go back to that one. So, and I hate using S's, but for the sake of this, how to have it set up, we will. So there is Sponge Susie. She's going to be lowercase. And it tells us that SpongeBob is heterozygous. I'm just going to push this. Okay. He's heterozygous. That means he's going to have a capital S and a lowercase s. He's going to have one of each. So you're going to be pushing them over. And you slide them down. If there's a capital letter, you normally always want to write that one first. Just looks better. List the possible genotypes and phenotypes for their children. So their possible genotypes are either heterozygous or homozygous recessive. And the phenotypes, they could either be square or they could be round. It just depends which genes they get. What are the chances of a child with a square shape? So we have 2 that would be squares. That's going to be any with a capital letter. So there's 2 out of 4, or it would be a 50% shot. And what are the chances with a round shape? We have 2 that have lowercase s's. That would be 2 out of 4 again, and it would be 50%. So it's 50-50 on the shape. Patrick met Patty at the dance. Both of them are heterozygous for their pink body color, which is dominant over yellow body color. Create a Punnett square to show the possibilities it would result if Patrick and Patty had kids. Now on this one they use P's. So if they're heterozygous, you're going to have a big P and a little p, and I'm trying to make it very apparent to you which one is capital and which one is lowercase. All right. List the possible genotypes and phenotypes. So we have every genotype you can imagine, and we have both of the phenotypes as well. So we have homozygous dominant, we have heterozygous, and we have homozygous recessive. And with that comes our phenotypes. We have both pink and yellow. What are the chances of a child with a pink body? Pink is going to be anytime you see a capital letter. So you just need 1. So I got 1 there, I got 1 here, and I got 1 here. So that's going to be 3 out of 4. When you do your percentage, you could either divide 3 into 4, multiply it times 100, or if you just remember the like quarters, like 25 cents. Each square is going to be 25%. So this would be 25, 50, 75. So that would be a 75% chance. With our yellow body, I just have one. You need to have two lowercase alleles in order to exhibit the recessive trait. That's a 1 out of 4. And just one block is representing 25%. So I have a 25% shot there. So on yours, whenever you're doing them, I took out the Punnett squares. Like I said, it'd be difficult for you to type in the boxes on a Google Doc, and I didn't want to use Cami. So as long as you're getting these numbers, I'll know that you did them correctly. Everyone in Squidward's family has light blue skin, which is a dominant trait for body color in his hometown of Squid Valley. His family brags that they are a purebred line. He recently married a nice girl who has light green skin, which is a recessive trait. Create a Punnett square to show the possibilities that would result if Squidward and his new bride had children. Use the letter B to represent a dominant gene and a lowercase b to represent the recessive gene. So, if they brag that they're of a purebred line, they're saying that they are homozygous for that trait. So if he's light blue, that means he's going to have two capital B's. And if she is light green, those are going to be two lowercase b's because it is a recessive trait. List the possible genotypes and phenotypes for their kids. There's only one. All of their kids are going to be heterozygous because both of them are pure for their trait. And it's going to go towards the dominant side of things, so they're going to be blue kids. What are the chances of a child with light blue skin? If you look in there, as long as you have one capital letter, that's going to be blue when we talk about just regular complete dominance. So that's going to be 100%. What are the chances of a child with light green skin? 0%. Would Squidward's children be considered purebreds? No, they are not. They are hybrids now. They no longer are homozygous for the trait, and as soon as you're not homozygous for the trait, that is going to make you a hybrid. Assume one of Squidward's sons, who is heterozygous for light blue body color, married a girl that was also heterozygous. Create a Punnett square showing if they had kids. So we're using the letter B again. So one of his sons was heterozygous, and they married a girl that was heterozygous. Whenever you combine two heterozygous things together, that's where things get crazy because you end up with every possibility that could. Possible phenotypes, we have homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive, and we have blue and green potential colors. What are the chances of a light blue skinned baby? So you need to have a capital letter. So look for all your boxes that have capital letters. I have 3, so that's going to give me a 75% chance of blue, making the other 25% green. I think this is our last one. Mr. Krabs and his wife recently had a little Krabby, but it has not been a happy occasion for them. Mrs. Krabs has been upset since she first saw her new baby, who had short eyeballs. She claims the hospital goofed to mix up her baby with someone else's baby. Mr. Krabs is homozygous for his tall eyeballs, while his wife is heterozygous for her tall eyeballs. Some members of the family have short eyes, which is a recessive trait. Create a Punnett square using capital T for a dominant trait, lowercase t for a recessive one. And they actually do this type of stuff whenever they're going through like genetic counseling. And if you're trying to determine whether or not your kid could get some type of a trait, they will go through and make a Punnett square. So he is homozygous, so that's 2 capital T's. She is heterozygous for hers. So she also has tolerance. We go through. List the possible genotypes for their children. So their kids could either be homozygous, dominant, or heterozygous because she has that heterozygous trait, a recessive trait. Did the hospital make a mistake and explain your answer? So we know that short eyeballs are going to be a recessive trait. So in order to be recessive, you have to show two lowercase letters. None of their combinations would give you two lowercase letters. So in this case, the hospital did make a mistake. The recessive trait is not possible given their genotypes. All right. And that is it for this particular activity. I'll meet you guys back here again for the next one.